Hey everybody, I don't know about you, but as you've watched out over the world, the war in Russia and Ukraine is not just isolated to Eastern Europe. It's spread all over the world, and you can see it in market instabilities. You can see it here. People who do not think that that war is affecting you, all you got to do is look at gas prices. You look at your food prices. You see the global change that has happened. But you know something that's also affected investments as well. And I've said all along, legacy precious metals is your navigator. They're the ones that see you through to get to the next level. The good news about this is, even with market volatility, market instability, you've got options. And gold prices are rising as investors turn to gold. And gold presents a hedge against this inflation and that protects you against the weakening dollar, which we are seeing. Legacy Precious Metals is the only company I trust to deal with gold and silver and the other precious metals. You need this investment. You need this as part of your portfolio to keep you buffered from what we're seeing in the world, war and volatility in the market. This is where you need to be. Call Legacy Precious Metals today. Be proactive about this. Get on board with it. Call them at 866-528-1903, 866-528-1903, or you can download their free investor's guide at legacypminvestments.com. legacypminvestments.com, your navigator in a volatile world of investments.
Do you want to listen to a podcast?
By who?
Georgia GOP Congressman Doug Collins.
How is it?
The greatest thing I have ever heard in my whole life.
I could not believe my ears.
In this house, wherever the rules are disregarded, chaos and mob rule. It has been said today, where is bravery? I'll tell you where bravery is found and courage is found. It's found in this minority who has lived through the last year of nothing but rules being broken, people being put down, questions not being answered, and this majority say, be damned with anything else. We're going to impeach and do whatever we want to do. Why? Because we won an election. I guarantee you, one day you'll be back in the minority and it ain't gonna be that fun.
Hey everybody, welcome back to the Doug Collins Podcast. Great episode for you today. This is time to buckle in, strap up, and get ready. I got Grant Stinchfield on the podcast today. If you've ever watched him for at least a little bit, you know that passion this man possesses, and he possesses a passion for America that is strong, America that is putting itself and its citizens first. And he's been a journalist who's actually been out there on the front lines, and he's got a great story to tell. I've been privileged to be on, was on his show. We've gotten to know each other pretty well. Grant, welcome to the Doug Collins Podcast.
Man, Doug, it's such a pleasure to be here with you, and I'm honored you invited me on.
Well, it's gonna be a fun time. All right, one of the first things I get this question. I saw you at last at CPAC in person. We've talked since then. What's Grant up to these days?
Yeah, well, it was a little bit of a shocker. My show on Newsmax got canceled. You know, we were doing 8 o'clock, and we were doing real well, anywhere between the second or third highest rated show on the network, and of course, they moved Greg Kelly to 10 o'clock, and my show got bumped and Greta Van Susteren in. So I instantly started to scramble, right? And the scrambling, I've always been a hustler. I've always been able to make money. I've had businesses in the side. I just sold a trucking company about a year ago. I owned auto care shops before that. So I start the hustle process. But I said, you know what? I don't want to get out of this media business. I'm loving the fight for this country, and it's so important right now, probably now more than ever, as you well know, Doug. So I'm happy to say that within the next few weeks, we'll be announcing a new streaming platform that's going to be big. And there's a lot of high dollar conservatives putting some money behind this streaming platform. I will be unleashed finally, able to talk about a lot of things that I couldn't talk about on Newsmax. And of course, we're going to continue to bring the fight to the left. So the streaming platform is going to be really, really big. I'm excited about it, and they're not going to keep me down. That's for sure, Doug.
Well, I never expected that. I mean, that sounds exciting. I look forward to not only seeing that often, but getting to know more about what the plans are for that. Because I think that's one of the things, Grant, that is very concerning right now. And again, taking a part of your show, which was spot on so many times, and moving it. Off and now, giving you, I think, though, maybe a better platform as we go forward. What is it? And let's just sort of talk off the cuff. What is it with journalism these days? I mean, it's just at this point, it's become for so many just turned off completely, so that they're going, frankly, to other ways to find news because they can't get the real story.
Yeah, and one of the things I want to do is take Salem Communications out of this. Salem has your podcast. I'm working right now with Salem to start a podcast as well, and I do radio for our Los Angeles station. This company's great. They've never told me, hey, I want you to talk about this. Don't talk about this. They've always let me kind of do my thing. That wasn't the case at Newsmax. It wasn't the case when I worked at NBC. A lot of people don't know. I spent 20 years in the NBC owned and operated local stations group. And I think we all know the liberal journalists that get into this. What we don't know is what I call the corporate media and the corporate media structure that mandates more about what you can't talk about than what you can talk about, even in conservative circles. So everybody's worried about getting sued. Everybody's worried about what angle they might be running in Washington, and this from a corporate level structure. So it puts the muzzle on a lot of journalists and, of course, opinionators like myself. And that's the big problem, is the corporate media. And don't think that Fox News and Newsmax don't fall into this whole corporate media structure. They absolutely do, which is why these alternative outlets are so important to getting our message out there and rallying the troops, whether it's Daily Wire, whether it's Breitbart, whether it's this new outlet that we're forming. And really, I throw Salem Communications and Salem News into that as well, because the muzzle is on these big corporate style entities.
Well, and I think that's been, that was one of the things when I started with Salem. One of the questions, that I was having is there anything that, what can we talk about, what not? And I've been able to run the gamut from a podcast that deals deep in politics and also deals in culture as well. So it's I think these are important because people are just, digesting news differently. And as much as you like it, don't like it, nobody sits down at the dinner table anymore, technically at 6:30 every night. And on the background, you have Walter Cronkite telling you the way it is. I mean, they just don't have that anymore. We get our news in such different ways.
People tell me all the time they just wish they had an unbiased version of news where you just were told the news. I actually don't think that's true. I don't think there are people hungry for that anymore. People seek out what they want to hear. That goes for conservatives and it goes for liberals. And so I think different networks can pick their lane. And then if they had news programs that were somewhat unbiased, and in many respects, Fox News does an okay job of this. Newsmax does an okay job of this in their daytime programming. But in the end, people want to go to sources that they can trust, because the news is much more than who got killed, what store got robbed, who had their house broken into. That's old-fashioned news. That's Miami news back in the 1980s. People are now concerned about their lives. What's going to happen to the stock market? What's going to happen to their ability to decide for themselves and their kids how they want to be educated, or their health care and what they want to put in their bodies? These are decisions that are really important for them. So I think people are in a position where they've got to go find people they can trust, always question, always do your own homework. But in the end, you've got to go seek this out. You can't rely on ABC, NBC, CBS to give you the nightly news the old-fashioned way. It's not going to happen.
It's just not. Well, I mean, it goes to show you right now that, and frankly, whether you good, bad, or different, I've been listening to him for a long time. The most influential, it's amazing right now. The most influential, I guess, trendsetter, influencer, whatever you're going to say, is a comedian, martial artist who done reality TV, Joe Rogan. I mean, it is amazing, that, you hear it there and it spreads everywhere else. It's like they're getting their show notes from Joe Rogan.
So, I know you're probably like me. If I start a podcast, you got this podcast. Wouldn't it be great to have an audience like Joe Rogan, right? I mean, this is a powerful guy and he's making lots of money and there's nothing wrong with that. Here's what Joe Rogan has, Doug, that you and I don't have. You and I have been conservatives probably for as long as we can remember. We love the Constitution. We study it. We know it. We know what the founders' vision was. We live it. We breathe it. Joe Rogan, I think what we're watching is his growth into being a conservative. I don't think he was a diehard constitutionalist coming up. He's starting to learn, and what he has, like most conservatives have, is common sense. So the public gets to witness his curiosity, where you and I, of course, were curious about our guests, but we don't have curiosity about how the Second Amendment is written or what it means. But Joe Rogan does. We know it. He doesn't know it yet, and then we're watching him because he has common sense. We're watching him real time kind of come over to our side.
It's been amazing, and when and it's amazing to me because the left always thought he was, and I say this in an open way, that he was theirs. I mean, he came from sort of their world, but I mean, he's been influenced. One of the things that got me, and then I want to get into your background a little bit, is his. I remember years ago, and he's told this story many times, but I think it's what Americans are hungering for. They're hungering for honesty. They're hungering for just someone who'll sit there and talk. He talks about going through his health, and because he's always healthy. And he was against hunting. He didn't think about meat, and he was introduced to hunting, and now he's a very big bow hunter, which I enjoy doing as well. But it's that willingness to learn and willingness to question that I think appeals to people. And it's seemingly funny that most of the mainstream media now has went away from that. They don't believe that people have that inherent ability to think for themselves.
Yeah, they really don't, but they're getting a real wake up call with this. And Joe Rogan does something really well. He's a great storyteller, and he really is great at getting stories out of his guests, right? Rush Limbaugh used to do this as well. Rush Limbaugh was one of the greatest storytellers on radio. In many respects, if I could be the storyteller that he was, we'd be in great shape, because by telling stories, by entertaining, it is the number one way to get information out there. And sadly, all young people older people want to be entertained too. But young people don't realize the need for political information about where the country's headed. And so Joe Rogan does it in a way where he's infusing into their mind necessary information, but he's doing it in an entertaining way. Some of these young people, I don't even think they understand what they're receiving, but in the end, they are receiving it.
Exactly. Well, moving back to that, I mean, I've learned, just in knowing you a little bit, but also learning stuff even from this podcast today about your, trucking company interest, your, automotive. One of the things that I've always said about this, and my listeners have heard it many times from interviews from everybody that I've done, from political leaders to other business leaders, is they know us, and I know you get this, I get this. They know us by our TV. They know us by, they say, hey, I know who you've had this at the airport. I know you. And oh yeah, okay. Then you get, but they don't know who we are. So one of the things I always like to do is when I take these time for guests is just sort of give where Grant came from. I mean, how did you get to this point where you're opinionator, as you said, you've been influencing a lot, you're a powerful force in that. Where did that come from? Give the background for us.
Well, I appreciate that. I come from a family of entrepreneurs. My father didn't go to college. He was a contractor in New York, just recently retired, built big giant houses in Westchester County, New York. My grandfather was an electrical contractor. He was an Italian immigrant, but he was first generation here. His father was, and they had a large electrical construction company in New York City. And I got to watch them at times struggle, worry about making payroll. And at times I watched them on top of the world. We had all kinds of money and we're going on vacation, and I watched these ebbs and flows. But I always saw, well, my grandfather used to say, no matter what happens, don't ever blow your cool. And he never, ever did, even through all of his struggles. And I could see that strength, and he was a World War II veteran. My father had a lot of that kind of strength as well. And so I saw that. I went to work for the family business. Ultimately, I was watching TV one day, looking at a reporter. I hated construction in New York City. I was always a conservative. I didn't like the politics there. I said, I'm going to get a job as a reporter. I went to Missoula, Montana, went all around the country as a reporter until finally in 2011, I was covering the Super Bowl in Dallas for the NBC station here. There was an ice storm going on. We had the Super Bowl here. I don't know if you remember this. I'm standing on a bridge, Doug, telling people to drive slow in an ice storm as if they don't know to drive slow in an ice storm, right? I said to myself, during the economy tanking, if you remember, from 2008 to 2012, it was really bad and TV stations were not doing well. I managed to keep my job because I was doing all kinds of different things, from chasing storms and sports and investigative reporting. But I put that microphone down after telling people to drive slow, and I said, a monkey could do this job. And I'm getting paid the money I get paid. This isn't going to last. So I went out, talked to some friends. I liquidated my 401k, and I bought Quick Car of Irving, KWIK. It was an auto care business, a large one. And I ran about 15, 16 men doing oil changes and fixing people's cars. And I did that for 7 years. I started a trucking company. In that process, built that from 1 truck to 10 trucks. I knew entrepreneurship was the way to keep yourself secure. All the while, I ran for Congress. I lost, tried to beat an incumbent in a primary, but I raised a lot of money and I raised a lot of eyebrows. That led to radio. That led to working for the NRA and helping them launch NRA TV. That led to Newsmax, and then here we are today.
And here we are. Just curious, who'd you run against in Texas?
I ran against a guy by the name of Kenny Marchant. He was the quintessential establishment Republican. Somehow during the worst economy in American history, maybe up until now, he managed to double his net worth. Go figure there. And he never did anything. And he was not a great congressman. But I'll tell you what, Beth Van Dyne, who I know you know, she now holds that seat. And she's a fabulous congresswoman. So the people of Irving, Texas, and into South Lake, Texas, got a good one in Beth.
That is, well, I mean, that's just an interesting background. I mean, because what you're able to bring to interviews, you're able to bring to a perspective is, I mean, think about, you look at this, 6 years ago or a few years ago back, you were running an auto care shop. You were talking to people, as they perceive life, just in the reality. That to me is some of the best training that you can have, is just listening to people, sort of what we call down here around in my part of the world in the South and out there as well, is sitting around the Waffle House and find out what people think.
Absolutely. And that's one of my favorite things to do. I love listening to people's stories. Maybe it's why I love this job. Probably why you were a congressman and have this job now, is the best politicians, pontificators, whatever, are the people that can listen. And when you listen to people, boy, it can open up your eyes to the world. Doesn't mean you have to agree with everything they say, but you have to really listen. And I think the people can tell the difference between those that are just listening and those that are really taking in the information that they're hearing.
Well, Grant, for me, I'm a trooper's kid from North Georgia. My daddy was a Georgia State Trooper for 31 years. My mom worked with senior adults during the day. And for me, I never lost that sense of awe. Even when I was in the state legislature, I was a pastor for years. I'm still in the Air Force. I've been in over 20 years. And when I went to Congress, it was like every time I got off that plane in DCA, I'd look over at the Capitol and say, is this the day they're not going to let me in? I mean, because this is the kind of story that liberals don't like to tell. Liberals believe that somewhere along the line, the government is the thing that's going to get you forward. And for those of us who've worked, who know how to put a fence up, who know how to, to change out a faucet, that's where the real America is. Grant, if you, in your time, because you went through some tumultuous times, frankly, through the election cycles and everything else, where do you see, because the left still doesn't get, and take Donald Trump and put him as the marker, and that's fine. I worked with him real well. You've worked with him real well. We get it. He hits a nerve because of his attitude and how he says it. But there is also a lot in there that he hit that Republicans, Democrats, and others were missing, and that is the fact that most people do not get up every day worrying about Washington, D.C. They worry about themselves. And he actually turned it to them to make a difference. Coming up into an election cycle, I don't hear that as much right now. I hear Republicans saying, we're going to win, Biden's bad, but I don't hear the discussion about America as much as, and the ones that have fueled this resurgence in conservatism.
Let me just say this to finish up on the theme here. So when I got canceled from Newsmax, most people say, well, what am I going to do? Especially a TV person where your only skill is TV. There's not a lot of jobs where you're hosting an 8 o'clock primetime show for a conservative talk show host. But I never ever worried because I had the skill of entrepreneurship. And really, I don't even call myself an entrepreneur. What I call myself is a small-time capitalist. If you can learn the skill of going out and buying a cash flowing business, not one that you have to turn around, a cash flowing business that you think you can build up, you'll always be able to make money. It's a great skill, and I'm so grateful that I was able to do that. This goes to what Donald Trump typifies. Now, he did it on a huge level. He's a massive capitalist. I could only dream to be like that. And I actually don't have desires to be a billionaire. I just want to be successful, pay my bills, take my family on vacation, go out to eat. To me, that's the American dream. I don't need to be a billionaire. I like money, don't get me wrong, but I don't need to be a billionaire. Donald Trump is the only billionaire I know that was able to relate to the working class the way he did. We almost felt like he was one of us. When you looked at him, he talked like us. He was an outsider like us. It didn't seem like he had he was so high and mighty that he was part of the ruling class, and there is a ruling class of career politicians in Washington. Donald Trump was not that guy. And for a billionaire to relate to real Americans who all they want to do is be able to provide for their families and have that opportunity, I think that's the chord that he struck. And he made us realize that the media was not working for us, and Washington politicians, including many Republicans, are not working for us. And I've said, and what Donald Trump really helped me get to the point of realizing this, is once you realize the government is willing to lie to you, and you realize that the media is willing to lie to you, once you come to that conclusion that that's a strong possibility, your eyes can now be open to all of the schemes they are playing against us. But you've got to end up getting to that conclusion. They are willing to lie to us. And I think Donald Trump helped us get there to realize that.
I agree with you completely. You know, one of the things that always struck me is after getting to know him and watching him through the years and everything else was the fact that his resignation, you get outside of Dallas, get outside of Fort Worth, get outside of, you go into the back country and Texas, you go into Mississippi, you go into North Dakota, you go into Georgia, Southern. I knew that there was something very different about the connection with Donald Trump when I would go into very extreme rural South Georgia, very economically deprived areas, and out front would be 3 Trump flags. I mean, you're driving along in the middle of literally, nowhere, and you see these Trump flags, and they've been up now for 5-6 years. I mean, they've been up that long. One of the things that you just hit on, and I was a big part of this, Devin, myself, Jim, Jordan, others, we dealt with this issue of the FBI. We dealt with this issue of Jim Comey and the rest. We're seeing the circling of the wagons again in some of what the Department of Justice is going on. At a point in time now, is there been any, and you saw it from the Newsmax perspective, you saw it from other perspective, I was hoping we get to a better place to where there's just a questioning, not of destroying institutions, but saying, let's be honest about what we're doing. The FBI just seems to have not changed. And I think that's an inherent problem at the top. No matter, what government we're running, if you got an area that is not enforcing justice and going political, you've got a problem.
Well, look, the FBI has had problems going all the way back to J. Edgar Hoover. I mean, they were doing this with communist lists and all kinds of things. Anytime you consolidate so much power into one organization, there's certainly the possibility and probably the likelihood that it's going to run out of control. And I believe the FBI has run out of control for a long time. Do I believe there are good FBI agents inside the FBI? I do. But I also believe that if you're a good FBI agent, you believe in the rule of law, that you've got to speak up and come out. And I think it's no coincidence. Doug, maybe I'm too bold to say this, but I consider you've become a friend over the years. Coming on my Newsmax show, you named guys like Jim Jordan and Devin Nunes, who have also become friends. It's interesting how these people all coalesce around each other because we all have the same views. It's like us against them. And we're not typical of all Republicans either. And so when you take a group of guys like that, you included, and you start calling into question the FBI, you start investigating the FBI, those in Congress need to start doing this as well. Something's got to change because I shouldn't have to be afraid. And Doug, I tell you this, I'm a fearless guy. I'm a bold guy. No one will ever keep me down. But you don't think that I don't think that if I say something on this podcast or on the radio, is the IRS or the FBI going to come target me? I truly believe that it's a strong possibility. I just had to do my taxes. I sold a business. I'm probably paying way more taxes than I should be paying because I wanted every I dotted, every T crossed, because I feel like I'm a target. That's not America, Doug. That's a regime we live under.
It is, and I think one of the issues that is being brought up here is this similar. And coming from my perspective, I come from a law enforcement background. Like I said, been with it all my life. I was born into it, and so for me, it's not a matter. I don't come at it with any bias as far as saying I'm against the police to start with. Or I'm coming at it and saying, look, you've got a job to play, and you're not playing it. And what is burdensome to me and to others is, and especially what I've looked at, you've looked at it, the others have looked at it, is when we point it out, it's like, again, we're fighting a battle. And I think it's a conservative battle, which I want to see conservatives get in this fight. And at the same point, it's not fighting to just fight. It's fighting to win something. It's fighting to make progress. Do you think Grant, I've made this statement before. Nancy Pelosi, who I just disagree with on everything, I think her policies are terrible, wrong, and everything else. She does one thing very well. They've only had power for 8 years out of 30. 8 years. And yet they have Obamacare, they have Dodd-Frank, they have this infrastructure bill, they have all this stuff because she's willing to give up position and power for a policy. I've mentioned this to so many, from leadership, from McCarthy on down. Do you think maybe after November we win it back, we went through everything we went through, that there will be a group that will come through and say, let's push as much as we can conservative, get as much as we can do, and if people don't like it, that's fine, they can vote us out, but realize that policy will stick with them. We've got to be willing to lose the position and the power to gain the policy. What are you seeing as a possibility we could do that?
Well, in podcasting, radio, and TV, content is king. In politics, content is king. It's your policy that works. We can complain about everybody else. We can complain about the other side. But unless we either have a solution to the other side or a policy that's going to move us forward, it really doesn't make any difference. Now, I'm skeptical that anybody in Washington, including Republicans, are going to be able to do exactly what you spelled out. It seems common sense to me. The problem we have is Joe Biden still is in the White House, and he can veto anything that comes up. But I really believe, and Donald Trump did this, you have to be talking about policy and solutions. I can't tell you how many emails. I'm sure you get the same ones, Doug. What can I do? What do you want me to do? They say, spell out a plan. Don't just complain about the other side. And so solutions are everything when it comes to this.
Well, and I think we're going to have to do that. And again, what I want to see happen is they come in, do the investigations, do all of the stuff, but be different than what the Democrats were in 2019 when I was sitting there next to Jerry Nadler and their complete obsession was impeaching Donald Trump and Mueller reports and everything else. And that's all we had to do. They lost their opportunity to do a lot of things. Republicans, if conservatives will just stand up, and look, we know Biden will be president. That's an issue. But I would rather a Congress work to get 75% of what we need and then flip the presidency in 2024 and go back and get the rest of it. I've got to see that fight. And one of the areas I'm frustrated right now, Grant, I'm not sure, from your perspective, but I had to do several interviews today, one on Newsmax and others, in which I was asked the question in the way, and I'm not saying it was this way, but it was asked in a tiptoe fashion. I hate this when they do tiptoe questions.
I can't wait to hear this. I can't wait to hear the question.
The question was, well, there's some concern. It was Lindsey Graham introducing this abortion bill, and it's discussion about abortion in Republicans. And it was like I said, the folks, I love them. They're good people, but this is the way the question was asked because they was wanting me to basically say, Republicans need to be cautious with, this Roe v. Wade stuff. And I said, no, I am tired of conservatives who've ran as pro-life all their career, and now they're simply shutting up. My question to you, and I asked you back to the reporter, is I said, why are these Republican candidates not asking the Democrats, why are you in favor of killing or abortion up to the time of birth? Why are you in favor of sex selection in abortion? Why are you in favor of you being used as contraception? Why are you in favor of killing disabled children in the womb? And, put the emphasis back on them and let's have this discussion. Grant, I kid you not. I stopped and there was like, wow, that was an interesting statement. It was on this morning. It was national report. It's good folks, but it's like they've not had conservatives willing to fight. I'm tired of it, Grant.
No. How about, so I know you say get 75% of what can be done in Washington. So they wouldn't like me up there because I'm at the point where forget about working with them. I'm at the point of steamrolling these mother scratchers, that we overwhelm the House, overwhelm the Senate. We push through what we want to push through. And if we want to talk about abortion, then we talk about abortion. And we want to talk about why it's bad, then we talk about why it's bad. And we own our issues and we be bold about it and stop dancing around every issue that they think the media is going to think that somehow this is not the issue that we should be talking about. Screw the media. Screw Democrats, and let's steamroll them and get this country back on track. And I think if more Republicans would take that attitude of, I'm going to punch you in the face, not literally to all you liberals out there, I'm going to trigger you, but verbally, with the Constitution, the truth, our words, our minds, they're the greatest weapons. We can't be beat. Why do they not realize, Doug, that we cannot be beat?
Right. Well, and I think it goes back to this idea of, well, am I going to stay in office? Are we going to get anything done? Here's what I think the real thing, Grant, and I think you just hit on it as well. We've also got to have a plan and agenda that is more than just pablum. And I think one of the problems, and I've criticized Republicans even when I was there, and I said, look, we've lied to our voters too much. And I don't mean lie in the sense of I'm going to do that. I lie in the sense of remember back in 2010 when you were still a reporter in Dallas? The whole 2010, the Tea Party movement was, we're going to go to Washington, D.C., and the first thing we're going to do is repeal Obamacare. That was a lie. Let's just be honest. That was a lie. Obama was still in the White House. He wasn't going to do it. But what we kept telling people, and we kept telling them, we're going to do this. And then we got up there, and they found that they couldn't even get consensus. And then it began to fester, and people got to be frustrated. And I think that's when Donald Trump came in. But we've got to get to the point to where we're saying, okay, look, like you just said, Biden's going to be there. We're going to fight with the Senate. We're going to get it. But we're going to fight to get the very best and push them through as much as we can and stick together in doing it. I mean, Grant, this is the problem I'm seeing, and you're seeing it as you go around the world. How can we get Republicans to stick to it and not worry if a reporter likes you or not?
Yeah, and that's what the Democrats do so well. They pick an issue and they're all on the same page. You watch them at night, they use the same words. They use the same terms. I promise you, they have cheat sheets going out to every single member of Congress out there that says these are the talking points, and every single one of them get on board. Now, it's easy to say because if I was a United States Senator and Mitch McConnell tells me talking points about spending money in Ukraine, I don't know if I could get on board, right? That's the difference between us and them because we're independent thinkers. They're not. They're followers. I call them blind liberal zombies, and they're followers. The liberals really are the blind liberal zombies. So this is our look, and we believe in the rule of law. The Democrats are willing to cheat, so we're always taking a back seat because we're not willing to cheat. They are. This is what makes it so tough for us.
Well, it is, and I think this is the concern that I have. I tell you, as you look ahead, and this hopefully will not be the last time you and I talk on the podcast when we're going to be on with each other, but as you look ahead in this, what is your biggest concern come November? Because, right now, the Republicans are panicking. The media is giddy. Democrats are supposedly, stopping away. Look, I still think we're going to take the House. I think we'll take it pretty easily. Senate, I feel good. There's still some issues there. That's going to be tough, and because we're letting a lot of consultants run races that shouldn't be running them. But let's see where we're at. Where do you see us post Election Day in November, and what can we do to prepare for really the next 2 years with Biden, but also running into a presidential election in 24?
Did you ever see Jackie Gleason in Smokey and the Bandit where he has his heart monitor and he's running om?
Hey, wait, Grant. Smokey and the Bandit for Georgia is not a movie; it's a documentary. Okay, come on, this is live for us. Okay,
it's one of my all-time favorite movies, and so that om. I need to do this every time I start talking about the election. So on the overall fear, my biggest fear is losing. And we don't take back the House or the Senate and put a stop to this Biden agenda. But my concern overall is still election integrity. I don't know what Republicans were thinking in these state houses across the country, including Arizona, which tries to tell me that they have done everything they need to do. They have not. Michigan, Pennsylvania. You look at all of these states, we are not where we need to be when it comes to election integrity. These mail-in ballot schemes, and I'm telling you, the mail-in ballots are responsible for all of this. It's just ripe for fraud. I don't know if you saw this study that came out from the America First Policy Association last week. It literally got no coverage. You had Cobb County, Georgia, where you are. If I have my numbers right, I believe it was 34,000 more ballots than voters in 2020. How is that possible? And how does that not get any coverage?
Yeah, see, that's become the problem. They don't want to cover it, and if they deem it anywhere on the, frankly, they would just say the Trump side or the conservative side, mainstream media is not going to cover it. We go back to Hunter Biden, you go back to everything. This is a concern because, like I said, you're not seeing people take for real the issues that we have, going on. That is a concern of mine.
Doug, Dade County, let me just give you this number. 16,000 votes in Dade County, that's Miami area, more than you had voters. Rick Scott won his election in 2018 by 10,000 votes in Florida. You had 16,000 more. This was John Lott, who I know you know. He's done some great studies on guns. He's turned to election stuff. These studies are real. They're real numbers. Cobb County, I believe, they overwrote the election data. They're supposed to keep it for 22 months. They update the voter rolls. They overwrite it. There's no way this is a coincidence, and yet they want to tell me that it was the most secure election ever, and you've got more ballots than voters in so many counties across the country.
Well, and I think that goes back to this, what I've said a lot of times, especially in some of these election decisions, was the never let a crisis go to waste. And that's what you saw in the pandemic, and we'll just send it everywhere as we go. Grant, I think before we get going, though, I think there is hope in the idea, and we're going to go back to what you're going to be doing. We're looking forward to that exciting announcement coming up soon. We'll, definitely get you back on and talk about that. What can people do? Because one of the things that I'm concerned about is conservatives not understanding what we're up against. And that's why I do this podcast. I do a lot of presidential addresses. I'll go through them, but it is amazing to me that, as you said earlier in this podcast, you said everybody sort of goes to their own bent. And I get that. Liberals go to liberals, conservatives go to conservatives. But I want a conservative renaissance man. I want a conservative renaissance woman who actually understands what the left is doing. They read widely. They understand on their own ideas. How can we make that difference in our communities and helping, parents broaden the scope of their kids? Because we go back to it when we started these safe spaces on campus and these non-graded classrooms. These from the last 20 years are now running corporate America. Now we're seeing it played out. How can we make a bigger impact and encourage our conservatives to not just nod and wink, but actually begin to be thinkers again?
So I think we're seeing it, of course, with these mama bears and papa bears that are going to school boards, not only going there and raising hell, but also going there and running for school board and starting to change the process. But beyond that, we're not going to be able to control what happens to our kids when we send them off to school. We're just not. You're going to get a liberal teacher. We better freaking teach our kids how to deal with a liberal teacher, how to critically think for themselves. Every day your kid comes home from school. I've got a 13-year-old boy. He didn't really love school all that much. He'd rather be playing sports. I was a lot like that. But still, I talk to him about what happened. What happened in school? What are you reading? I look at his books. I look at his notebook. We go through everything. And if there's something fishy, it's not like I go out of control. I mean, unless there's something real. And have had where they were anti-cop in one school when he was in grade school, and I went ballistic about this little lesson. But a lot of lessons, I don't go ballistic. I talk to him. I give him arguments. Now, he also is my son, right? So he's been around this for a long time, and he's telling.
I have boys like that.
Yeah, I mean, he's telling his friends about Sleepy Joe, and I'm like, oh boy, here's my 13-year-old, but God bless him. You've got to stay engaged with your kids. I know that's simple advice, but I'll tell you, it's real easy when you're working 10 hours a day and you're tired and you just want to sit down and watch a little TV or a football game or something to forget about it, but you can't. You've got to get up in their business like it's nobody else's business but yours, because it is. That's it. It's the parents' business. That's it. You got to stay up in the kids. You
got to stay up in it. Folks, been talking with a good friend, Grant Stinchfield. I'm glad he's been on this podcast. We've been working on this for about a month. Glad he has been able to come on. We'll not this be the last time you're going to hear from him. I'm looking forward to the new projects, Grant. Please keep us informed on that and anything we can do to help there. But you've just hit it right in that last part. We've got to take advantage and put emphasis where emphasis matters. And that's in our family and our communities. And that's how we turn back over this conservative thought here in America. Grant, thanks for being on the podcast today.
Hey, Doug, thank you so much. Stinchfield 1776, a follow would be great. And do with your friends and family what Doug and I just did here. Talk about things, and it'll make a difference. Doug, thank you, buddy.
Outstanding so much. All right, thanks, everybody. We'll see you next time. Hey everybody, MyPillow. I just wanted to let you know MyPillow is having the biggest sheet sale of the year. You'll have to help. You have all helped build MyPillow into an amazing company that it is today. And now Mike Lindell, the inventor and CEO, wants to give back exclusively to his listeners. The Percal bed sheet set is available in a variety of colors and sizes, and they're all on sale. For example, the queen size is regularly priced at $89.98, but it is now only $39.98 with our listener promo code. Order now, because when they're gone, they're gone. You're not going to be able to get it. These Percal sheets are breathable. They have cool, crisp feel. They come with a 10-year warranty, 60-day money-back guarantee. Don't miss out on this incredible offer. There's a limited supply, so be sure to order now. Call 800-986-3994. Use the promo code Collins, Collins, or you can go to mypillow.com, click on the radio listener square, and use the promo code Collins, Collins. Lisa and I sleep on these sheets every night. You will want to have them as well. They're a wonderful product. Go right now, either 800-986-3994, code word Collins, or go to mypillow.com. Also use the code word Collins to get this discount. You will not regret it.